we inform.
Religious freedom is about people of faith being able to live out their faith, live out their convictions, no matter where they are.
We equip.
Sacred honor is the courage to speak truth, to live out your free speech.
We also rejoice in our sufferings because we know that suffering produces perseverance, perseverance, character, and character, hope.
This is At the Core on American Family Radio.
Welcome to The Core here on American Family Radio. Glad to have you with us today on the program. Brand new edition of the show. Walker Wildmon here with you on American Family Radio. This is At the Core. If you want to subscribe to the podcast, we would like for you to do such. Just type in the name of the program, whatever podcast platform you use, and click the subscribe icon. In many of the platforms, it's a plus icon to subscribe to the show. Well, Christmas is right around the corner, but the news cycle just hasn't slowed down. And we're going to be talking about everything from President Trump's appointments to the cabinet to the U.S. Threat of drones on our domestic soil and in our domestic airspace. And then we have a couple of guests as well. We do have free shipping this week on the Resource Center, and we'll actually be talking about our Christmas buttons coming up in a segment or two. And the shipping, though, is free for everything in the Resource Center. So if you go over to resources.afa.net, resources.afa.net, everything is free shipping at the Resource Center, resources.afa.net. And I'll go as far to say that if you order something now, you'll have it before Christmas, barring the Postal Service dragging their feet, which is not unusual. Raise your hand if you've experienced a delay with the U.S. Postal Service. Everybody and their mom and their third cousin. So we're not guaranteeing anything because we've got the federal government involved. But the likelihood is if you order something from our Resource Center this week, which includes free standard shipping, then it will be there before Christmas. And we have a litany of products and resources available for your perusal. So go there, check that out, and order a couple items, some excellent stocking stuffers there at the Resource Center, some excellent books, DVDs, Christmas buttons, wristbands, shirts, so on and so forth. One of my favorite items on the Resource Center is their, I'm having trouble finding it here, but it's the Christmas shirt. It was from last year, but we've still got the design out. Man, that thing looks good. I see people out in public wearing it. That's just a good-looking shirt. So we've got that there. With a manger scene on the front. So resources.afa.net, resources.afa.net, free shipping, everything over at the Resource Center. Let's turn our attention to the scriptures before we jump into some of the stories. Rescue me, this is Psalm 140, verses 1 through 4. Rescue me, O Lord, from evil men. Preserve me from violent men who devise evil things in their hearts. They continually stir up wars. They sharpen their tongues as a serpent. Poison of a viper is under their lips. Keep me, O Lord, from the hands of the wicked. Preserve me from violent men who have purposed to trip up my feet. Verse 2, men who continually stir up wars. I think we could probably all point out somebody who continually stirs up war. And that's a key tenet of the incoming Trump administration is to stop stirring up wars all around the world. I mean, how many wars have begun under Biden? This has been a disaster. So as Christians, we ought not desire war. Now, sometimes war comes on our doorstep and we have to defend ourselves, but we ought not to be out looking to pick a battle, to pick a war, especially some of these wars that are foreign, tertiary, really non-centered on the protection of the American people and our interest. Ukraine's an example. You know, there's really not a compelling case for us to be meddling around in the Ukraine war. Well, NATO, Walker. Well, Ukraine's not a member of NATO. Boom, mic drop. So we ought not be a people that are hungry for war. That's Psalm 140, verses 1 through 4. Speaking of war and the Department of Defense and the Pentagon, boy, they have been trying to take out Pete Hegseth since day one of his nomination to be the next defense secretary. And I find it quite ironic that some of the same Republican senators that are dragging their feet on Pete Hegseth, they had no problem voting for wokester Lloyd Austin, but we get a patriot like Pete Hegseth and then like, oh, I don't know about Pete Hegseth. Well, you haven't had a problem with Lloyd Austin and the disastrous defense secretaries we have over the last 20 or 30 years, and all of a sudden we get a patriot in Pete Hegseth and you want to start squawking. Give me a break. You've lost all credibility. Well, President Trump is not mincing words. He fully supports Pete Hegseth. It looks like Hegseth has overcome some major obstacles. Let's listen first to Pete Hegseth himself. This is the nominee for the Defense Department cabinet position, the Secretary of Defense. Let's listen to him set the record straight on the man he is today and who he reports to.
Good morning, everybody. I just want to relay that it has been a great week. It's been a great day. Great day yesterday. On the Hill, meeting with senators, earning every vote. I have a great deal of respect for this process. Advice and counsel have gotten great advice. We don't take anything for granted. The conversations have been robust, candid at times, with great questions on policy, personality, everything. So we're going to earn those votes. We're fighting all the way through the tape. We're grateful to have the president's support because his vision for this Department of Defense is to bring it back to its core capacity of deterring our enemies and, if necessary, defeating those enemies. And that means ultimately putting war fighting at the middle of what the Pentagon does. No more social justice, politically correct approaches to how we fight and conduct wars. This is about lethality, meritocracy, readiness, war fighting, and accountability. And I'm grateful that President Trump has bestowed this opportunity on me. This process has been a very good one, despite all the noise on the outside. Had a great interview with Megyn Kelly yesterday, and will continue to answer questions specifically to senators, who are the ones that deserve answers to every question they have. And in every office we've stood in, we've welcomed that opportunity. It has been a great week. It's a process that's ongoing, and we look forward to finishing it.
Will you support the release? Will you support the release of that whistleblower report for the concern?
It's very interesting what the press likes to dub a whistleblower report, which some others might clarify as a email from a disgruntled employee. One might say.
So would you support the release of that?
Do you think you can convince Joni Ernst?
You on the issue of alcohol?
Oh, we've had great conversations about who I am and what I believe, and frankly, the man I am today. Because of my faith in my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, and my incredible wife, Jenny, right here. I'm a different man than I was years ago. And that's a redemption story that I think a lot of Americans appreciate. And I know from fellow vets that I've spent time with, they resonate with that as well. You fight, you go do tough things in tough places on behalf of your country. And sometimes that changes you a little bit. And by the grace of God, and my Lord and Savior, I had an opportunity to come on up out of it and do great things with great veterans organizations that fought for vets, that fought for reform at the VA and for war fighters, and at the Fox News Channel to advocate for those very same causes. And I'm proud of what I fought for. I'm not going to back down from them one bit. I will answer all of these senators' questions, but this will not be a process tried in the media. I don't answer to anyone in this group, none of you, not to that camera at all. I answer to President Trump, who received 76 million votes on behalf and a mandate for change. I answer to the 100 senators who are part of this process and those in the committee. And I answer to my Lord and Savior and my wife and my family. I'm proud to be here. And as long as Donald Trump wants me in this fight, I'm going to be standing right here in this fight, fighting to bring our Pentagon back to what it needs to be.
Well, there you have it. That's the redemption story from the man himself, Pete Hegseth. And excellent. He's going to stay in the fight, and, well, he's in the fight. And President Trump is fully supporting his nomination. I think Pete Hegseth is the right man for the job at the Department of Defense. He's not bought and paid for. He hasn't been in quote unquote leadership for 20 years at the Pentagon. And this is the essence of revolutionary change that President Trump was elected upon, is we've got to stop promoting from within. Because these guys, these generals that have been around the block, going back to Clinton, some of them Reagan, Bush 1, Bush 2. I mean, this is like, these folks are operating, with all due respect, they're operating under an old, outdated, bloated, slow to move, slow to advance, quick to lose strategy. And this story I've got on these drones that we'll hopefully try to cover before the end of the show. But look, we're being outmaneuvered by our adversaries at every single turn. I mean, there's no doubt we're still the most advanced military in the world, but we've got some major issues. And this advancement in AI and this advancement in drone fighting is a major problem. We have not kept up with this technology. And to prove my point, Exhibit A is the fact that we think we can rely on F-15s to shoot down drones. That is a problem, folks. That is a 1990s approach. How many bombs, number one, do we want to be paying hundreds of thousands of dollars per bomb that we have to use, our missile, to shoot down these little drones? I mean, think about how much money that Israel has spent, and us, shooting down these Iranian drones. These missiles are not made for shooting down drones. They're made for shooting targets on the ground and large, threatening, moving targets in the air, not little drones that are carrying small payloads. And so we're using an outdated way of fighting, and then not to mention we've got these drones that are being launched over American soil reportedly, and we'll get to that later, that we really aren't sure how to shoot down. Because the Pentagon isn't sure whether they want F-15s firing missiles over Northern Virginia. I mean, raise your hand if you want F-15s firing missiles over your house. Said nobody. So this is a problem. And the reports are that we really don't have a sophisticated and secure and safe means to shoot down these drones. Well, that's a problem. Because we've been spending $800 billion over at the Pentagon, and you're telling me we can't shoot down a hobbyist drone that's hovering over Quantico? What have we been spending our money on? Oh, that's right. We've been spending our money on transgender surgeries in the military. We've been spending our money funding abortions in the military. We've been spending our money funding Ukraine's war in the Middle East, in Europe. So Pete Hegseth's the guy. That's the moral of the story. Pete Hegseth's the guy. And we have got to get this Pentagon up to the 21st century. And there's a time and there's a place for more ships and more airplanes, more tanks. I get it. I'm a large proponent of that. And I think there's a lot of danger in fully adopting this high-tech warfare. But we have to be able to do both. All right? We have to be able to fight a hot war. We have to be able to fight a war thousands of miles away to project strength. But there's some major vulnerabilities that we're facing because of lack of advancements, because we've been completely and utterly distracted and stuck in old school technologies and old school approaches to our problems. And it's time to step it up, because we're falling behind drastically from a readiness standpoint when it comes to the U.S. military. So kudos to Pete Hegseth. Amazing to hear his testimony there, to hear how God has changed him. And Lord willing, he'll be our next defense secretary. We'll be back.
At the Core podcasts are available at afr.net. Now, back to At the Core on American Family Radio.
Welcome back to the Core, second segment underway. Well, in the first segment, I talked about this free shipping that we have going on over at the Resource Center. And one of the plethora, to use my favorite word.
Ooh, that's a good one today.
Yes, it is good. And look, Trivia Friday, they can act like plethora is their word, but I definitely use it way more than they do.
Yeah, not so much of it.
Yeah. Now, heretofore, that's 100% theirs, but plethora is definitely my word. But speaking of free shipping, one of the items that we have there is our buttons and our wristbands, and none other than Brother Jerry Lawson's with us now. Has been doing this for several years. Well, you've been, Brother Lawson, promoting the buttons for a long time, over a decade. But as far as you've been coming to studio for several years, this time of year, promoting the Christmas buttons. So welcome back.
Well, thank you. It's a joy to be here, and I just appreciate the button ministry and all of the precious memories I have down through the years because of these buttons.
Yeah, you've been a champion for the Christmas buttons, and I know we tried the wristbands for a couple years, but the buttons just seem to stick, and everybody loves them. You've got hundreds of stories that you've developed over the years, but you're a local pastor from around this area, a little over an hour away, but you carry these buttons with you everywhere you go, and just give us kind of a little history of your button giving over the years.
Well, it started about 20 years ago. Just passing by the television, and this guy, Bill O'Reilly, said that there is a war on Christmas.
Yeah.
And that just caught my attention. And so I listened, and I realized for the first time that many people were told, and especially employees in stores, they couldn't say Merry Christmas because it was offensive to people. And I thought, Lord, it's offensive to me that you can't say Merry Christmas. I mean, they can say whatever they want to. I should have the freedom of speech as well. And so I started asking the Lord, well, how can I push back? I mean, down here in a little old tiny community like Ackerman. And that's when your father started, or your grandfather started thinking about these Christmas buttons, and then he got them. And, man, I knew right then that's where the Lord wanted me to be.
Yeah, absolutely. And folks, if you many of you probably ordered these before, and we've got a couple of different designs out there. We've got red versions, green. We've got the wristbands as well. But the gospel, Bobby's wearing his red one there. The gospel is on clear display. Jesus, he came for you. Merry Christmas. The other one has Jesus, our living hope. Merry Christmas. But Brother Jerry Lawson's with us to talk about this. He's been handing out these buttons for a long, long time and witnessed to hundreds and thousands of people throughout his time. The message, Brother Jerry, this is a time of year that it's low-hanging fruit, right? I mean, it's
absolutely
it's Christmas. Everybody enjoys Christmas, whether they like it or, whether they realize it or not, or whether they're a believer or not. So, when you're, number one, it draws your attention immediately when you see somebody. If they're wearing something on their shirt or a message, it draws your attention. But give us just maybe a funny story or two about you witnessing to people and giving them these Christmas buttons.
Well, several years ago, Dad decided to go with the wristbands.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was invited to come up here and to do the morning devotion. And so I had my wristbands on, but I didn't have my button on. And when I got up to give my devotion, I kind of chastised your father. I guess I need to apologize.
Yeah.
And I asked him, I said, do you know if I have the wristbands on or not? Had long sleeves on it. Everybody looked. We don't know.
Yeah.
The button, everybody sees. The wristbands, nobody sees. And your dad was sitting there and said, get buttons next year. And it tickled me.
That's so true.
And,
yeah.
But, Walker, let me tell you, the day that I came up here, my mother was having a stent put in her heart in Arkansas. But I'd already committed to come up here. So I was here, and the next day I went to Arkansas, and they were doing a procedure on my mother, and my younger brother said, let's go get something to eat. So we went to a restaurant right below the hospital and had a nice meal, and as we're leaving, this lady's walking in with a Christmas button on. And I told Danny, I said, wait a minute. So I went to the lady and I said, can I ask you about that button? She said, yeah, I love passing out these Christmas buttons every year. And I was listening to American Family Radio yesterday, and this brother Lawson said that next year he thinks we're going to have buttons again. And then she asked me, she said, who are you? And I said, I'm that brother Lawson that was on the radio.
Wow.
And it just blowed her away. I'll never forget that. That's a sparkle in life. But she was tickled to death to get the buttons again.
Yeah. Let me ask you this. Once again, we're talking to Brother Jerry Lawson about our Christmas buttons. You can go over to resources.afa.net to order yours. Resources.afa.net. We do have a special offer. You can get 20 buttons for $10. We've also got the wristbands there as well if you want some of those. Has anyone ever told you no? Has anyone ever turned down your Christmas button offer?
20 years, yes. One person. I was in Washington, D.C., and was walking down the street, and there was a man standing outside this restaurant, and when these limos would come up, he would open the door, very distinguished, stovepipe hat and all, and so I offered him a Christmas button, and he said, I don't believe in Jesus. I said, well, you certainly have that freedom, but one day you will believe in Jesus. And he didn't have anything to say, but he's the only person that ever said that he wouldn't take a button. And
that shows, Brother Lawson, the openness, really the openness of the vast majority of people to at least hear the message of Jesus. Of course, they might not accept it. They might outright reject it once it's delivered. But the fact is that so many people are hungry for the truth, and they're hungry for hope. And these Christmas buttons are just an open door for people, and it's for you're not an introvert, but some people are, and so this is just an easy way if people like to have kind of a door opened for them, right, to step into. The Christmas buttons provide that for sure. If some of our audience is listening, and maybe they've been getting the Christmas buttons. Maybe they've been ordering packs of 10, 20, 30, but they've never viewed it as a mission opportunity. They've more ordered it for themselves or their family. Challenge them on how they can use these to share the gospel.
I had a lady come up to me Friday night in Columbus, and they had that Wassail Fest down there, and I enjoy going to that and passing out the buttons. I usually pass out 250 buttons over there in Columbus. And this lady come up and she said, are you standing in line? And I said, no, ma'am, I'm not going in there and drinking the wassail. And she said, well, I didn't want to get in front of you. She had on a white sweater, and I said, can I give you something? And she said, sure. And so I pulled out the red button. I like the contrast.
Yeah.
And I handed it to her, and I said, now, if Jesus offends you, I will apologize because I don't want to be offensive to anybody. And she looked at me and she said, why would you ask me if Jesus would offend me? I said, well, if you told me that Jesus offended you, then that opened another door for a discussion. And she laughed and she said, I see where you're going. And she said, no, I'll be tickled to death to wear that. And immediately put the button on. Yeah. And I encounter so many wonderful Christians, and I'm blessed passing the button out.
Yeah.
It's the blessing that I get out of it.
Amen. Well, you're an expert at it, and we'll always send you as many buttons as you need. I'm sure Buddy Smith hooks you up. We'll send you as many buttons as you need because you're one of our champions when it comes to sharing this message. And it's more than just about the button. The button's just an opportunity and a tool that God uses to share his hope and his message of salvation this Christmas season. Well, Brother Jerry Lawson's been with us. He's our long-standing Christmas button champion. We'll have to come up with an official title. We'll avoid the wristbands. I think they had their place and they did well for a year or two, but the buttons, I agree, are the way to go. So thanks so much for coming in and sharing some stories.
Enjoyed it. Thank you, sir.
Absolutely. That's Brother Jerry Lawson, local pastor here from this area, North Mississippi. And he's been passing out these Christmas buttons, as he said, for over 20 years. And, on a positive note, folks, that the war on Christmas was won. That's a fact. The war on Christmas was won, and it was won because people like Jerry Lawson and others decided, hey, look, we're not going to let Christmas get hijacked. We're not going to let Christmas get canceled. We're going to pass out Christmas buttons. We're going to say Merry Christmas at every opportunity. So that's a positive story when it comes to Christmas season. And we appreciate Brother Lawson coming in to share some good stories. Resources.afa.net, resources.afa.net. Well, in the time we have left, I do want to kind of circle back to this drone story. I've got a clip here. So there's been multiple, the whole UFO phenomenon has been around for decades. From a personal standpoint, I just don't have any indication, any belief that these are extraterrestrial devices, aliens, to use the term that's floated often. I just think that some government, whether it be ours or another, has very advanced aerial technology, and that explains the UFO phenomena. That's what I firmly believe. I think the evidence backs that up. There's actually no evidence of alien type craft, alien type creations that are visiting Earth, if you will. There's just actually no hard evidence of that. There's anecdotal, tertiary stories, but there's no hard evidence. And when I'm talking about hard evidence, I'm talking about scientific evidence that we can put our hands on and examine that these UFOs are anything other than an advanced nation state that has really outmaneuvered us on technology, or maybe it's U.S. technology and they don't want to tell us about it. But nonetheless, Representative Van Drew was on Fox News, and he actually revealed his sources are telling him that these latest drone appearances in New Jersey are actually from Iran. Clip 3.
In focus now, Republican Congressman Jeff Van Drew of New Jersey, member of the House Judiciary Committee on the Hill right now. How do you address this at this point?
Well, here's the real deal, Harris. I'm also on the Transportation Committee, on the Aviation Subcommittee, and I've gotten to know people. And from very high sources, very qualified sources, very responsible sources, I'm going to tell you the real deal. Iran launched a mothership probably about a month ago that contains these drones. That mothership is off, I'm going to tell you the deal. It's off the east coast of the United States of America. They've launched drones, is everything that we can see or hear. And again, these are from high sources. I don't say this lightly. Now, we know there was a probability it could have been our own government. We know it's not our own government because they would have let us know. It could have been some really glorified hobbyists that were doing something unbelievable. They don't have the technology. But let's pretend that's possible. The third possibility was somebody, an adversarial country, doing this. Know that Iran made a deal with China to purchase drones, motherships, and technology in order to go forward. The sources I have are good. They can't reveal who they are because they are speaking to me in confidentiality. These drones should be shot down. Whether it was some crazy hobbyist that we can't imagine, or whether it is Iran, and I think it very possibly could be, they should be shot down. We are not getting the full deal, and the military is on alert with this.
Look, you've given us some pretty dire information just here, and I want to make sure that our viewers are digesting this. Iran has the capability to pull up along our eastern seaboard and launch drones the size of an SUV into the skies of several states, particularly New Jersey, where we know the incoming president has a large home, also in the same county or nearby where some of these drones in New Jersey have been seen. That capability exists. It's possible some of those drones are here. So I have two questions. How are they fueling them? They have to land somewhere. Drones don't fly forever. Why don't they close down the airspace? Yes, it's inconvenient. Yes, it's the holidays. Shut it down. But if you start shooting things and you don't know how they're fueled, that's going to be mass explosions. This isn't like one spy balloon. Congressman, this is serious.
We've got to bring them down, and we've got to find a way to bring them down. I don't know exactly where they're landing. Obviously, I have some information, and again, this isn't just Jeff Van Drew. Oh, let's get on Harris Faulkner's show and say something outrageous. I'm telling you the straight deal from very high positioned individuals who are telling me this. And the bottom line is they're launching them. They are across the country. We don't even have anything like this. Our government and also certainly our hobbyists don't. So think about it. It's not only do I have the information, but it's also common sense. We've got to get them down. We've got to determine how they function, what they do, make sure that we can get them, and you're right, in a safe way. When I say shoot them down, get them down any way that you can, but right now they're probably extracting information. This is a clear and present danger to the United States and to our president-elect, and it's a serious business.
Well, and if one of them happens to fall and they're fueled, that explosion could kill.
This is a major problem. And look, we don't know if it's Iran officially. That's what the representative said it is. They're Chinese-made, Iranian-purchased and deployed drones. I don't know if that's true because Iran is actually pretty outdated with their technology. They can't even seem to land a missile in Israel. I would be surprised if these are Iranian-operated drones. But 100%, I would not be surprised if they are Chinese-developed drones. Once again, they could be Iranian. It's possible. I think there's no doubt that China has the capacity to develop and deploy these. But nonetheless, the moral of the story is we've got SUV-sized drones flying over near Bedminster, New Jersey, where the president-elect's estate is, and we don't know what to do about it. We don't know what to do about it, and our government doesn't know how on earth they're going to get these drones out of the sky. Major, major vulnerability.
This is At the Core on American Family Radio with your host, Walker Wildmon.
Welcome back to the core. Well, if you thought these drone sightings were rare, boy, are you wrong. There were 49 reports on one evening in New Jersey. 49 reports in one evening in the state of New Jersey. Local mayors there are absolutely flipping out. And our glorious federal government just doesn't know what they're going to do about it. We're just not sure. And apparently, we have very limited options on how to shoot these things down or capture them or intercept them. I think this is all an utter embarrassment, and I think the Trump administration needs to 100% declassify all of this drone studies and drone intelligence. I mean, we're in 2024. The fact that we don't know what these things are, where they're coming from, is an absolute embarrassment. And if the government knows and they're not telling us, well, that's a scandal in and of itself. So we got to find out what on earth is going on and why are SUVs flying over our cities, and we don't know whose they are or what they're doing. This is an absolute embarrassment. And this comes from the same federal government that knows where you and I spend every penny of our income, whether we miss $1 in taxes. I mean, this is the era of the Big Brother state, and we've got SUV-sized drones flying over our cities, and our government is twiddling its thumbs going, I don't really know what's going on. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? The FBI can tell you where I've been the last 24 hours down to the square foot that I've been standing through a search warrant, and we don't know what SUV-sized aerial phenomena are flying over our cities. I mean, give me an absolute break. Let's move on to another topic, another absurd topic, and that is how the Biden Department of Justice and FBI have completely gone after pro-lifers all around the country. Hundreds of people have been gone after by the Biden DOJ, and these are all people that believe in the sanctity of life and have been peacefully protesting that for various years. We have on with us now Coleman Boyd. He's a pro-life activist, and he's also been convicted of a violation of the FACE Act, which has been weaponized by the Department of Justice. He's with us now. Coleman, welcome to the program.
Hey, Walker, thank you. It's good to be on here.
Well, Coleman, we've covered these stories. We haven't specifically covered your story, but take us back to square one. Take us to when this incident took place, and then when you found out that the Biden Department of Justice decided they would target you.
Yeah, so my wife and we have 13 children, and we've spent years out on the sidewalk doing gospel ministry at abortion mills, and we do a lot of traveling around the country and working with local believers. And so in March of 21, we were in the Nashville area. We were working around at a lot of different abortion mills. And on the day that we were charged, I was actually in a public hallway preaching the gospel and doing a Facebook Live, asking the folks with me to pray. And while there were other people down the hallway, all of them were praying and worshiping the Lord. It was really a beautiful scene where they were just singing hymns and praying, and we were offering help to ladies. Well, some of those people did indeed sit in front of the door and block the door, and they were charged with trespassing. 2 of those were my children, and those trespass charges were eventually dropped. And so it was all over. Then in June of 22, when Roe was overturned, within 2 weeks, Biden had appointed a reproductive task force, and their specific purpose was to go after pro-life advocates and push back because Roe was no longer there. And within, I think in October is when the indictments came out, which was 18 months after I think 10 or 11 people had been charged with trespassing, a local crime that was dismissed. They decided it wasn't even worth pursuing, apparently, from a local level. And then 18 months later, we were indicted. And 9 of the people that were indicted were actually down the hallway blocking the door. 2 of the people, we were there and never did block the door. And we were 6 of us were charged, not just with FACE, which is a federal misdemeanor, but they also pulled out a post-Civil War conspiracy charge that they used to go after. It was an anti-KKK law because of going after people that were burning houses and trying to stop ex-slaves from voting and things of that nature. They had made a conspiracy felony charge with a penalty up to 10 years in prison. And so one of the guys, something Patel, he was in the civil rights group. He dreamed up this plan to go after us, attached that to a 6-month misdemeanor in FACE. And they've had incredible success in a federal judiciary that, they've been very picky in where they chose. And so they've had a lot of success with it.
Yeah, this is a travesty. Not only the first and foremost travesty is the fact that babies are being slaughtered, and all of a sudden you're the bad guy, right? it's upside down. But then more broadly, you look at the selective enforcement of our laws, and the fact that the FACE Act, from my understanding, and you would know more about this, but this thing's never been used. I mean, this is like on the books, kind of virtue signaling on the books. I think it goes back to the 90s, but it's never actually been deployed and prosecuted. So they brought up this novel legal approach at using this FACE Act against pro-lifers. But you mentioned that that was interesting. The local trespass charges, I'm assuming those were local. Those were all dropped. Yeah. So this thing was like, y'all were just moving on with life, and everything had kind of settled down, which is typical when there's peaceful protests like this. And nobody's injured, no property's damaged. This is typically what happens. It's just not a priority for local prosecutors unless, it becomes a broader issue. But you're saying the feds basically revived this thing. What was a non-issue, the feds revived, correct?
Yes, absolutely.
Well, where are you today? I mean, this has been several years in the making, and thank the Lord that we have a president coming in that's going to pardon people like you, if not the first day, within the first 48 hours. But tell me where you are today.
Well, literally today, we're cutting trees. I started a tree cutting business in the midst of all this. But we are still, I'm under house arrest. So I was convicted of a federal felony and a misdemeanor. And so I'm under a 6-month home detention, and I have a 5-year probation. And so I'm carrying that out right now. They gave me a $10,000 fine. We had to pay that within 30 days. And the Lord has been gracious through all of this. It's unjust. Don't misunderstand me, but I rejoice in the Lord. And what Paul described in 2 Corinthians 11 as momentary light affliction. Well, I don't even think this can fit into the category of affliction. We've got brothers and sisters who are in prison right now that were with us, and they would tell you the same thing. They are rejoicing in the Lord, and God's doing amazing things. With that said, I'm an ER physician. By the Lord's grace, I'm still practicing medicine. I did lose my job where I was at because they had in their bylaws, they don't allow felons on the schedule. Imagine that, huh? And,
you and President Trump can't work for them.
so that's right. But and look, I don't fault them. They stood by me all the way through this, and then they just couldn't bend their national laws and bylaws, and that's fine. But I'm still working, and then I started a tree cutting business in the process just because we've done this forever and decided to do that on the side. So the Lord, our ministry has not slowed down. We're just not able to travel doing it now, but we are able to do some locally. So the Lord's been good to us through this.
Let me ask you this, Coleman, because we're working on this. Look, our goal is to get 100% of the people that were weaponized by the FACE Act either pardoned or commuted within the first day or two of the Trump administration, including the J6ers, and we're going to have guests on in the next few weeks to talk about that. But do you need your sentence commuted? Do you need to be pardoned? I know there's a difference between the two. What do you need to clear the record?
For me, I need my sentence pardoned. I need the felony off my record as a physician. That's a big thing. It's a miracle that I'm still practicing medicine. That's just the grace of God. But I need mine pardoned. I think we've got some people that probably will not accept a pardon because of the need to be able to appeal this and get these laws overturned. We're pushing forward on the legislative side, but we're also pushing forward on a judicial side.
Yeah, well, we can pardon 99% of you and leave one outstanding for litigation purposes.
Right.
Yeah. That's no problem.
And that could just be commuted. That could be commuted, and the appeal could still take place. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's a good idea. How many? This is you and I don't talk to the people I interview before the show, so these are totally off the cuff questions. How many of these people are locked up like you over this stupid FACE Act?
So who are actually in prison right now?
Well, no. How many people has this been used against? Let me ask that.
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, okay. Yes. Actual people that I know of directly. I think there's about 25. There have been a lot, because a lot of these scenarios where the indictments have come down, there've been certain people have had multiple indictments. So I was indicted on 2 counts. Heather Idoni, who's a sister in prison right now, she's been indicted on, I don't know, maybe 8 counts. Cal Zastro's in prison right now. He's been indicted on 4 or 5 counts. So there's about 50 or more indictments out, but I think there's about 25 of us who have actually been to court.
Wow.
And found guilty of this. Now, as you mentioned, Mark Hoke earlier, he thank the Lord was found innocent, which was just a miraculous thing given our current system. So I praise the Lord for that.
Yeah,
but most everybody else that's gone through it, it's been railroaded to a forced guilty plea.
What about the mother down in Alabama? Are you familiar with her story?
Yes, Bevelyn Beatty. She's from New York originally, actually Jersey and New York. You were speaking of Jersey a while ago. She was, and then her and her family live in Tennessee, and she's in prison in Alabama right now. We've worked with her on the streets a lot around the country, and she's doing well in prison, but she's away from her 1-year-old child. I think she got 30 or 36 months.
Yeah, 3 years
in prison.
Yep. Yeah, that's criminal what they did to her, locking a mom up with a 1-year-old. These are the people that ought to go to jail, and I'm hoping President Trump takes this very seriously. And I think he will. I mean, I know the work's being done now to prep pardons and do what we got to do on that front. But to your point, I like that you're thinking long term about how to prevent this from happening again, because that's a valid point. Oftentimes we want to just fix our current circumstances, but that doesn't fix it for future generations necessarily.
That's right.
So
get the weapons out of their hands. Absolutely.
Would you say the FACE Act, I mean, is that pretty much your target, or is there some other kind of tertiary things that y'all noticed that they were using as well?
Well, the conspiracy charge is a target as well, but the FACE Act is the target. I mean, the FACE Act came about to end rescue. That was why they threw the stuff in there about protecting churches to be able, so the conservatives could justify to their constituents that they voted for it.
Yeah.
But they wanted rescue gone as well. And they did prosecute quite a few people early on, and that's what ended rescue in the early mid-90s. But since then, it's been very sporadic where it's been prosecuted over the years, and it's almost invariably been against Christians who are out opening their mouths for babies.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, this is another. It's also a broader question about should the feds be meddling in this? And the answer is no. I mean, we have local laws, local district's attorney, local law enforcement to handle these disputes. Which y'all had already sorted that out on the local level. So the fact that we're leaving the door open for the feds to come in just never works in our favor. So I agree completely. We need to pull all this back. Hey, Coleman, thank you so much for your courage. You're more courageous. I know you're not giving yourself credit, but you've been through a lot. I know the Lord's blessed you, but still, I mean, this has been 2 or 3 years of your life that you can't get back. So I appreciate your work, and we're going to do everything we can to see that that yours and everyone else's you're pardoned.
Walker, thank you, man. I praise the Lord for y'all, and it blesses my soul for people that like y'all don't even know us, and yet y'all are taking a stand to push for justice, and that's the heart of a Christian, whether it be for us or for when we're pushing for justice for the preborn. So thank you so much.
Amen. Thanks so much. That's Coleman Boyd. He's a 53-year-old husband, father, emergency room physician, and now he's got his own tree cutting business, and he's in the Nashville area there. That's where the feds went after him, is in the Nashville area. So glad he came on. We'll continue to cover these stories, but folks, these sentences have to be this has to be pardoned. These charges have to be pardoned ASAP. You know, I don't want to wait a week. That's weak. We don't need to wait a week. That is weak, WEAK. To wait that long. I mean, the J6ers and the pro-lifers, they ought to be pardoned, like probably up in there with like all the executive orders on border security, like the first day, maybe the next day. But this has to be a top priority because we're talking about people's lives that have been destroyed and just sought after by these wicked people at the Department of Justice. And I think Pam Bondi's going to do some good stuff. I think she's a good pick for AG. I think President Trump's team is focused on this. So we just got to keep the pressure up. And Lord willing, we'll have Coleman back once he's pardoned.